My name is Dominic, and this is my Section 5 assignment. So, coming from the mostly prosperous, successful, and advancing 1960s, which included civil rights of many minorities and the exploration of space, one would think this pattern would continue. However, those innovative times would come to a screeching halt starting in the 1970s. The energy crisis would start the decline of the US, and stagflation would inevitably drive the US to the ground. It is often thought that the US was still in decline and took a turn for the worse during the acts of terrorism. However, I believe that this actually united the country and was used as a catalyst to drive both moral and economical support of the United States of America. Though domestic oil production was decreasing, the consumer demand for oil products was still increasing. This would cause the US economy to depend more on foreign imported oil. Americans felt as though this oil was at their disposal. They felt that since they were the largest part of oil consumers, that these exporting countries could not afford to lose their business. However, they were wrong. In 1973, OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, embargoed the United States for supporting the Israeli military. When the embargo took place, the everyday life of Americans was changed. The price of oil skyrocketed, and the amount that was allowed to be imported was limited. Prices of gasoline rose unprecedentedly. Limits were put on the amount of gas that could be purchased at one setting. Lines soon formed for gasoline, with wait times as long as 2 hours. Also, certain ways of distributing the gasoline were put into place, and we might even consider them pretty ridiculous. For instance, if your last name was in a certain range, say if it was through A through L, you could only purchase gas on certain days like Monday, Wednesday. If your name was M through Z, then you were only limited to purchase gas on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This embargo will lead to high inflation and also will limit the effectiveness of US businesses. And when US businesses effectiveness is limited, this would in turn limit the amount of money that is available for consumers to spend and stimulate the economy with. Also, this would lead to a severe drop in the automobile industry. People were buying less cars since oil and gasoline prices were so high. All of these factors would lead to a falling superiority of the United States and its decline. Another item that would lead to the decline of the United States is stagflation. Stagflation is the combination of stagnation, which is a prolonged time of slow economic growth, and inflation, which is the increase of price of general goods and services. As you can see, stagflation is a combination of both. As the United States was not crippled enough during these times, stagflation would further carry out the decline of the United States. What caused these economic problems? The answer is organized labor. The working class wanted more benefits and a higher minimum wage, so when these two ideas were agreed upon, this would lead to an increase in the cost of running businesses. And when the cost of running businesses goes up, the price of the goods that they produce also increases. This means that American goods were actually more expensive than imported goods and would lead to consumers to purchase more of these imported goods as opposed to American goods. Also, the working class noticed that prices were constantly rising, so when they would buy their goods, they would buy them in bulk in large quantities, which would further increase demand. And when quantity demanded goes up, price of these items would also go up. This turned out to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. With the dollar weakening and the United States economy in a state of decline, the strength and power of America would continue to decline. As you can see,
As
the
you can
United
see, the
States was
United
not in
States
the
was
greatest
not in
predicament.
the greatest predicament.
Morale and loyalty was low,
Morale
and
and
pessimism
loyalty
was a
was
constant
low,
mindset.
and pessimism was a constant mindset
I'm
of
going
the
to skip a
American
couple
people.
decades of the 1990s and discuss
Well, I'm going to
terrorism.
skip a couple decades and move
Terrorism
on
had
to the
taken place in America
1990s
before the decade of 1990.
and discuss
However,
terrorism.
it wasn't until the bombing of the
So
World Trade
terrorism
Center in
had taken
1993,
place in America before the
which killed 6 people
1990s.
and injured over a
However,
thousand
it
more,
wasn't
that
until
the
the
complete
bombing of the
extremity of the
World Trade
situation
Center
was
in
felt.
1993, which
This would not
unfortunately
be the
killed
only
six
tragedy the
people and
United
injured
States would
over a
face.
thousand more.
8 years
The
later,
complete
in
extremity
2001, the
of
World
the
Trade Center would
situation
be
was felt.
targeted again.
This would not
September
be the
11th
only
of
tragedy the
2001,
United States would face.
a day that will
Eight
never
years
be
later, in
forgotten.
2001,
4
the World
airplanes were
Trade Centers were
hijacked using
targeted
box
again.
cutters, mace, and other forms of blades.
September 11th of 2011,
American Airlines Flight
a day
11
that
would
will never be
impact the North
forgotten,
Tower
4
of the World
airplanes were
Trade Center
hijacked.
at 8:46 a.m.
These people on these
At 9:03,
airplanes
United
will
Airlines
use
Flight
box
175
cutters,
would collide with
mace,
the
and
South
other
Tower.
forms of blades
And at
to
9:37, American
gain
Airlines Flight
access
77 would
to the
crash into the
cockpits.
Pentagon.
American Airlines Flight
The final
11
flight that
would
was
impact the
hijacked
North
on this
Tower at
day, United
8:46
Flight
a.m.
93,
At
was actually
9:03,
delayed that morning.
in the morning,
The
and
target
United Airlines
of this
Flight
plane was thought to
175 would
be
collide with the South
the
Tower,
White House or the Capitol.
and at 9:37,
However,
American
due to
Airlines
the
Flight 77 would crash
braveness
into
and
the
heroism
Pentagon.
of the people aboard the flight,
The final flight, the fourth one,
they were
United
able
Flight
to overthrow the
93,
hijackers and rush the cockpit.
was
This
actually
is
on a delayed
considered
departure.
the first American
This one would
victory
crash in a
over
field near
terrorism,
Shanksville,
and these
Pennsylvania at
passengers
10:03.
of this flight would save
This has determined the
first victory over
countless
terrorism for the
innocent
people of the
American
United
lives.
States. The
As
target of
stated
this
earlier,
aircraft
America was
was
already
thought
in
to be
low
either the
times.
Capitol or the White House.
Such a drastic
However,
tragedy,
these passengers
one would think that this would lead
would
to a
gain
frightened
courage and
and fragile America.
However,
However,
the
the opposite took
cockpit
place.
and overthrow the hijackers who would inevitably
Americans
crash
gained
these
unity
planes to
from
the ground.
this. Patriotism was increased after the
These
attacks.
passengers would be known
Community
as heroes
involvement
and saved countless
increased as well.
innocent American lives.
People were taking time out of their personal lives
As
to help
stated earlier,
others
these were already low times in the
and
United
were
States.
engaging in
Such a drastic
actions
tragedy, people would think
outside of
that this would lead to
themselves.
more frightened and fragile America. However, the opposite took place. Through these actions that these terrorists tried to strike fear in America, we actually gained unity from these events. Patriotism rose, and spiritual and religious institutes sought larger enrollment and larger parishes. Time spent with family was increased also after these attacks, and community involvement as well. People were taking more time out of their personal lives to help others and would engage in actions outside of personal gain that they hadn't been doing this before. This would increase the economy. Americans were finally gaining better attitudes towards America and its influence. Following the attacks, religious institutes saw larger enrollment and parishes grew. Time spent with the family was also increased, and this would lead the American people to have more faith in their leaders and the influence of America. Also growing were industries and production. This was increase this increase was due to certain things such as the World Wide Web and computer expansion. So all these actions would start to strive towards an inclining and stronger America. As you can see, it is true that America was in a decline starting in the 1970s. However, the communities of America would learn from these times and eventually strive. Even when tragedies would strike, Americans would not let this hinder our determination. And through perseverance and unity, America was back on the rise and once again resilient.